Good morning. Welcome to Newsmakers. Campaign politics in modern America has been reduced to a crude and potentially disastrous equation. Big money plus catchy slogans plus massive TV advertising equals victory. The potential implications of that equation are painfully obvious. In Washington, the insatiable thirst for campaign dollars has resulted in embarrassing revelations about using the Lincoln bedroom in the White House as fundraising bait to reward wealthy contributors. Locally, candidates for Cincinnati City Council know that the only way to break in is with slick, expensive TV ads. A potential candidate isn't committed to raising at least $125,000, isn't likely to end up sitting in one of the select chairs in council chambers. The real upshot of this is a continuing erosion of confidence among ordinary people that elected officials represent the common good rather than special interest. Twice council has tried to craft legislation to limit spending, and twice the courts have thrown it out. This week, Mayor Qualls introduced a new voluntary limits proposal for incumbents. This morning, we have two experienced city council candidates with us to talk about the pros and cons of limiting campaign funding in local races like city council. Bobbie Sterne was first elected to city council in 1971. Mrs. Sterne, a Charterite, is well known for running frugal campaigns. John Kruse ran unsuccessfully for council in 1993 and 1995. His second race, he raised $220,000, but finished 12th, just out of the running. Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers.
Good morning.
Bobbie, you've been around a long time, not only since you've been running and winning, but even before that you've been around politics. As long as I can remember, we've always talked about how expensive it is to run for city council or any other major office. Have things changed fundamentally, or is it just a matter the dollars sound bigger, but it's really just inflation and it's all the same today as it was 30 years ago?
Oh, I think it's increased much more than inflation and has become more like selling soap. And the electronic media, of course, is where people spend their money now. But I think what's a sort of benchmark for that is that the first time we tried to limit campaign spending, our idea of top dollar was $22,000. That was the early 70s.
So you've been trying since the early 70s, and you thought $22,000. Why, several times there have been efforts to limit the spending. Different marks have been put on that, sometimes a multiple of the salary of council members. Is that always been the way you've approached it? How did you pick out $22,000 back in the early 70s? How do you pick out a number? Well,
I think that probably what the amount of money that people regarded as being really almost necessary to launch a campaign, and I would guess an average, probably price, maybe even one of the top numbers that was being spent at that time. And now, of course, the last suggestion is 3 times what the salary is. I don't think people ought to be running for office for the salary, so I don't know, but I think that it's a generous amount from my point of view.
John, you have not won yet, and my understanding is you're not going to run for council this year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, but you've run twice before. Last time out, you raised $220,000. How does someone who's young, who grew up actually in Dayton,
right?
How do you even begin to go out and raise that kind of money? I think for the average person, it's just staggering to even think about setting that kind of goal.
Well, and that's a piece of this issue which is very important to me. The way I did it was through hard work. I raised $4,000 in 1993 when I first ran. I came to the community in 1991 and realized that $4,000 wasn't enough. You have to raise money to convey your message. The power of incumbency is a very important influence in who wins. As a matter of fact, 93% of the time, incumbents in city council elections here locally have won. So they're at a totally different level than non-incumbents. So the way that you counter that is to spend money, to spend it wisely, and to convey your message. Keep in mind also that the way we elect our council, with the top 9 vote getters being elected, is a large part a factor of name recognition. So you've got to have name ID to win. And incumbents start out with tremendous name ID. I think the Inquirer reported a few months back that the mayor had her name just in the Inquirer about 200 times in 1996. Again, that's difficult to counter that just to get to a level playing field. So again, the way I did it is I worked very hard, and I was successful at that part of campaigning.
Well, it's one thing to try to balance out that incumbency advantage, and I think we understand that, but where did you go to get that money? Who did you go to?
Well, again,
what were your contacts? Who helped you?
Well, again, when I came to Cincinnati in '91, no one knew me, and I didn't know anyone else. I didn't know anyone either. So I worked my base. I walked door to door in Price Hill. I walked everywhere else in the city, and I began to call people and get lots of doors slammed on my face. But I kept coming back. I kept working harder.
But you didn't raise $220,000 by knocking on doors, did you?
Oh, I sure did. Doors of people's homes or doors of people's businesses. That's exactly how I did it.
Doors of people's businesses.
And quite frankly, no one helped me. The Republican Party didn't help me. I had to go out and do it myself. And that's what it's all about. It's about working hard, and if you work hard enough, if you want something badly enough, you can maybe get it.
Bobbie, over the years, where do you see the money coming from to fund political campaigns? And has that trend changed any? Has the origin, the source of the funding, changed?
The origin for the tremendous amount of money that's spent, I think, comes mostly from business interests or special interests. And I think we saw that in, for instance, in Mr. Winburn's campaign. I think the social positions that he took, you know, like anti-choice, anti-gay, that the organizations interested in that helped Mr. Winburn with money. And I think that that big money really, probably Mr. Kruse may have had the Republican list of big business, I don't know, but I know that you know, a good share of when you get to that level comes mostly from business and from probably from family, friends. And
do you think that once people have made those sorts of contributions on the local level now, we're laying aside the Washington stuff, on the local level, does that give them special access? Does business have special access? Do special interests have special access because of the money they're able to contribute?
Well, I would suppose that's true, that the people who actually give a lot of money at least have access to that person. You know, I wouldn't hazard whether or not they have influence, but I'm sure that that their names are recognizable to the member of council.
Mm-hmm. John, as you were raising money in this last race, the $220,000,
yes,
did anybody say, well, I see, you know, I'm willing to make a contribution, but John, here's what I'm concerned about, and here's what, and I'm sure it wasn't put crudely, but here's what I'm hoping you'll do if you get into council. Was that sort of thing said to you?
Well, I mean, people certainly talk to me about their ideas for our community. I'm not going to deny that. Mm-hmm. But I think your question is more, did someone say, well, if you get elected, John, I expect you to do this? Never happened. And I don't feel that anyone that gave me money was doing so because of that. Now, I can only speak for myself.
Right.
But there's no doubt in my mind that I don't owe anyone anything based on who gave me money. Again, I did have the Republican list, sure, but you know, those are all, what that Republican list is all public information on file with the Board of Elections based on what people have raised in the past. But it's one thing to have that list, it's another thing to get those people to help you. They're not just going to write a check to someone that's running as a Republican or as a Democrat or as a Charterite, they need to know who this person is, and again, it's very hard work. Fundraising is not easy, and the reason I was successful at fundraising was because I worked harder at it than others. There were lots of people that could have been much more successful at it than I am, or than I was, I should say, but they didn't want it badly enough. I knew that that was a very important component in conveying my message in what's not a conservative Republican city, but a Democratic city. So again, that's another component in the spending issue, is it's not just clear cut. There are other factors involved which require a candidate to perhaps spend more money, the type of election or the demographic makeup of a community.
Bobbie, Council most recently passed a law to attempt to limit campaign spending. John Kruse and others took the city to court on that. The courts have ruled that that was unconstitutional. Unconstitutional limitation of their right, of candidates' right to free speech. Where do you stand on appealing that decision and trying to save that law? Are you supporting moving on with that?
Oh, yes. Really, I think we understood to begin with that it would be challenged, and feeling that perhaps 10 years will make a difference in the court and how it responds, because there is so much outcry now about the enormous amounts of money that are being spent, and I always compare it to just selling soap, because much of it is not at all, if you follow what the commercials are, they really don't let voters judge where people are on issues, perhaps one single thing. And so you saw that, I don't remember, but a very large number of attorneys general have signed on to protest the fact that there is no way to limit. And what basically it comes down to is that I, or Mr. Kruse, if we have that kind of money, can spend. There is no limit on what we can spend. And I see that as purchasing public office, and I think that's a threat, really, because sooner or later, and I think we have to look across the country and look at all of the elections and see who's winning. And it's rare that it's not the person who has the most money who wins.
Dan?
John, where do you stand on this appeals question? Let's go back to the original question.
Well, keep in mind, campaign spending is speech, and incumbents typically don't like to be attacked. It's very important, I don't think anyone will disagree, that we need to keep our elected officials accountable. And there's not been too much debate, political debate in our country or locally. So also keep in mind that spending caps are different than contribution limits. The city passed contribution limits, which should lower what a candidate can raise. We're not addressing that.
Explain that difference.
Well, prior to 1994, I believe it was, a candidate could raise unlimited amounts of money from individual people or parties or political action committees. Today, it's $1,000 per person, I believe $2,500 per PAC, and $10,000 per party. So we're not addressing that. That's separate. We're talking just about what I can go out and raise and then talk about the issues at hand. So that's the issue at hand, I believe. Now, my position with regard to the city defending this case, the city solicitor's department, the city solicitor's office, back when the council was deciding whether or not to pass campaign spending limits, told council, don't pass it. It's unconstitutional. You're going to waste taxpayer dollars. Well, so far the city has spent about $300,000 of our taxpayer money defending this issue of spending limits. And they're committed to taking it to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then probably from there to the Supreme Court, which is what their intention is, I believe. That will cost city taxpayers about $1 million to defend something which, again, is clearly unconstitutional. I have a problem with that.
I think that money is not speech, that dollars aren't speech so far as I'm concerned. And I think that we're making a great mistake in this country if we begin to equate dollars with speech and say, if you don't have dollars, you don't speak.
Well, the dollars that I raise, I use for yard signs, for literature, for TV commercials, for staff to help me organize different events. I don't know how I can speak if I can't raise money, because again, I'm not an incumbent. I don't have the bully pulpit or the power of incumbency.
But many non-incumbents obviously do win, and sometimes they win by running 3 times. Often they have to run twice. And there was a lot more going door to door, a lot more discussion. I can recall that there used to be much more obligation, I believe, on a variety of organizations to have forums where at least candidates could be questioned by the public and could debate. Now, those are very rare nowadays, and I think that those were much more important in letting people understand actually what was at issue. And when I ran early, I did the kind of literature that really was, well, it wasn't like a book, but it did say where I was on many, many issues and what I had done in many areas. And I did go door to door a lot, and I had people going door to door, and I think those are effective methods, but they're hard to compete against constant messages on TV, and I think that's what advertising's all about.
Well, then I ask
John, we're almost out of time, so real quick.
Okay. Well, my question then is, I come into this community, or anyone comes in this community, with virtually no name ID, and you're running against all these incumbents with a name ID of Heimlich or Taft or Stern or Qualls, and what is someone to do? Door to door is very important. All those things are very important that you mentioned, but again, in this size community, we've got to convey a very broad message.
Well,
and money's important to do that.
Thanks to both of you for helping clarify this, and as we move into the fall campaign, obviously this is going to be something that's up front and center as we look at this particular race. As we've seen, winning that first office can be expensive. How would you like to avoid all that by getting appointed to office the first time? And not just any office, but the one position that may single-handedly determine the fate of downtown in the next century. That's just where our next guest, Tom Neyer, finds himself. Join us after the break to meet our newest Hamilton County Commissioner. Welcome back. When Guy Guckenberger accepted an appointment to the municipal bench, the Republican Party appointed 30-year-old Tom Neyer to fill a seat. This morning, we've invited Mr. Neyer to join us on Newsmakers to discuss his reasons for seeking public office and his perspective on important issues facing the county commissioners. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thanks, Dan. Pleasure to be here.
Tom, for most people, they don't really know who you are.
Right.
What is it that you bring to public office that caused you to say, gee, I think I ought to be one of those 3 county commissioners up there?
Well, you're right. I've never held public office before, but I have been involved in a lot of public functions for the past 8 to 10 years as a commercial real estate developer. My job at the family business is to be out in the community working to develop our long-term corporate strategy. But as I do that, I've spent most of my time talking with people in the community groups, political groups, charitable groups, arts organizations, religious groups, trying to build the relationships that help build a community. So I've been involved with things like Leadership Cincinnati, like Boys Hope, Girls Hope, like the Ballet Company Board of Trustees, like the OKI Regional Transportation Task Force. I used to work for Kent Blackwell, work for Jack Kemp. So I've been involved in a broad range of things that I think have given me a fairly unique exposure to professional and civic activities in the community.
You have been involved in lots of things. One of the things that you didn't mention there was that inside the Republican Party, there have been some subgroups of young conservative Republicans who have come together.
Right.
You've been a major member of that.
That's correct. I've done a lot of things inside the party, as you mentioned. I'm vice chair of the Republican Finance Committee, the Policy Committee, the Central Committee, the Executive Committee, the Republican Club, et cetera. Beyond that, the group that you mentioned is the Hamilton County Conservative Forum that started about 6 years ago. I had an idea and mentioned it to Nick Veer, and another fellow had an idea and mentioned it to Nick Veer, who sort of brought us together, and we came up with a proposal to raise some time and some money for a targeted Republican candidate. Mike Allen was our first chair. Bob Bettinghouse was a member of the group. There's several members, both inside the party leadership and inside party offices, that got their start at the Conservative Forum.
One of the issues that we were talking about in the first part of this show was the whole question of financing political campaigns. And you didn't have to run a political campaign to get this first office.
Right.
But have you been, and has your family been, major contributors to the Republican Party? And is that a factor in this appointment?
I've not been a major enough contributor to get this appointment. My family has actually, of all of our community activities, and I'm very proud of what my family's done over the past generations, and myself and my siblings and cousins are doing the same, but most of our involvements have not been political. They've been more charitable, religious, social, civic. I have been certainly involved in political campaigns, and I've made some contributions, but they are not of the order of magnitude. I'm not going to the Lincoln bedroom, if that's what you're asking. That's not going to happen.
What about, though, you brought it up when you were sort of explaining your background. Neyer construction is out there in the community, all over the community, and I think it's even become much more obvious in the past few years. You've become much more public.
I guess that's good, right?
I guess that's good. I mean, is that a potential area of conflict of interest, though? There's a lot of development projects that the county commissioners are involved in. There's a lot of zoning issues that the commissioners have to deal with. Is this an area of potential conflict?
Potential, yes. Realistic, no. Obviously, any time that there's a zoning issue in which my company or any of our affiliates would have an interest, I'd have to recuse myself, and that's very clear. I have an opinion coming from the prosecutor's office that will explain other circumstances in which I'd have to recuse myself. So do I bring a pro-development agenda? I bring a pro-quality development agenda to the county commission. Unfortunately, our company does very little development within Hamilton County. Most of our work is in Warren County, Butler County, Claremont County, and Northern Kentucky. It's because there's just simply more activity going on in that region. I'd like to bring my expertise and my relationships to bear to help create greater development opportunities in Hamilton County for all the community. Those are not things in which Neyer could participate economically. And no, we have no interest in building the stadiums, never have, never will. We have no contracts ongoing with the county. So anybody who has a career outside of politics has some opportunity for a conflict of interest. The key is to know that, acknowledge it, steer clear of those, and get on with the things that are really relevant to your role as a commissioner.
Well, speaking of the stadiums, since you brought it up.
Did I do that? Why did I do that?
If you hadn't, I would have.
Right, okay. Right.
John Dallin has made it pretty clear from very early on that he's leaning towards Broadway Commons. Bob Bettinghouse has been a little bit less clear, but I think everybody generally thinks that he's leaning towards a riverfront site. That means the third commissioner is in a critical role here. Where are you right now, and what criteria are you looking for to make that decision?
Well, coming into this process quite recently, I have the luxury of not having had months and months and years of media attention to try to get my opinion out there. I think that's a constructive place to be right now. I think negotiations are most likely to succeed when opinions and personalities are kept beneath the surface. So what I can't do is come out and speculate or give my opinions right now as to which stadium site would work best or what it's like to negotiate with the Reds or the Bengals or what have you. Am I a key vote? Yes, but I'm one of 3 key votes. To say that my vote is more important than Bob's or John's, that isn't true.
But you're the swing vote.
So I hear. I don't know that I am the swing vote. I would love to have an opinion generated that has such broad community support that will have unanimous vote of the commission. If that doesn't happen, then yeah, it's going to be 2-1. So am I the swing vote? Is Bob the swing vote? Is John the swing vote? Yeah, you can make it. I understand that as the new guy, yeah, I would be construed as the swing vote. And sure, I can understand why that would come out. But I don't think that that's the case, and the issues are still developing, so that to say that one person has an ironclad position here before all the information is out, I don't think is fair to Bob, John, or myself.
Well, obviously, this issue will keep coming up, and obviously
Guarantee it.
we'll look for a chance to bring you back as your opinion formulates there.
It'd be my pleasure.
Thank you for being with us this
Dan,
morning.
thank you.
Thank you for joining us this week, and be sure to tune in next week. Our guest will be Ohio State Secretary of State Bob Taft, who is viewed as the front runner for the Republican nomination for governor in 1998. Good morning.